Dis. Disrupt. Disobey. Dissent. Disturb. Disavow. Disgust.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody instead of a bum, which is what I am.
Great expectations put to a meritocratic beat. You have entered the realm of Radio Tipping Point. Your host, Mike Boyle. In this show, we'll cover two basic components. The first one being meritocracy. And to what degree those ideals that we have in our society, are they truly based on merit? Or is merit something that you're born into? And a side event tied to meritocracy would be the expectations that society has put on us, or we have put on ourselves, and the burden that we carry due to the fact that no humans can live to these ideals. But let's start with expectations. Like the cigarette butts that are strewn by the side of the road, our society is filled with individuals who carry the burden of failed expectations. And a good friend of mine who made an offhand comment a number of years ago that is something that I've carried around since then. And he was talking about his children. And he said, very simple, don't expect. And this was my interpretation. That through putting expectations on others, you're setting them up to fail for a number of reasons. One, you're not allowing the others to live their lives as they see it. You're expecting them to conduct themselves within a standard that you set. And of course, that is anything but empowering. But even worse, they're setting themselves up for a standard that nobody can hold to. A message to you, Rudy: we are inconsistent as human beings. And we expect 100% from ourselves when we talk about these standards. Well, if 100% is not obtainable, then we are setting ourselves up for disaster. And in fact, very often that is part of the script that we have assigned to ourselves, knowing full well that the best comforting that you will ever get from a cocoon would be tied to the predictability that you know what's going to happen. That doesn't mean that we have to be happy about the ending, but we know how it ends. And I'd like to start by talking about some individuals that I've met over the years where I felt they were holding very closely to their script, and in fact, they have not figured out a way to get rid of the script. And sometimes I wonder if indeed some people would prefer to stay to the tried and true, because without running with that script, they have no idea what the ending's going to be. And that probably scares them the most. So to protect the innocent, I have put this together using the names of Greek gods. And the first example I'd like to start with is Apollo. Apollo uses the term happiness as a shield to show everything that he is not. He states that his goal is to promote happiness, that he wants to put on activities that make people happy. But when you dig deeper, you understand that Apollo is not happy at all. In fact, Apollo is very disturbed. And his emotions are somewhat like a roller coaster, which denotes that you have the peaks and valleys, those peaks being the ecstasy, and those valleys being despair. And I think Apollo has been carrying this cross for a long, long time. What I know of Apollo, it appears that he was always being compared to his brother. Not quite sure if the brother is older or younger. When talking to Apollo, I understand that there is a bit of a rivalry. But of course, Apollo was always set up for failure, or so it appears. So Apollo made the decision to compete by not competing. In other words, Apollo decided to create his own rules. And with that,
Your rules do not apply to me.
Yes, that's what Apollo claims. Which is, for Apollo, is basically the Joker card. When it's time to escape, Apollo pulls out that card. And that card has become Apollo's safety blanket. And when you push Apollo on these subjects, he will go ahead and claim, well, I can't do that very well. Or that's not my specialty. So that was Apollo. Who imposes these expectations? The Harvard professor Robert Keegan talks about the social mind. And within that social mind, Keegan refers to our sense of identity, our sense of being, very much tied to the grouping that we see ourselves being part of. And if we see that the societal group takes on certain mores, certain habits, certain norms, then we are immediately attracted to those mores, those habits, those norms. And without actually being cognizant of that process, we slip into the role that's expected of us, the role that our group actually plays. And often enough, the anti-role becomes the role. As if it's almost a knee-jerk reaction to those groups that we clearly do not want to be identified with. We will immediately take on the opposite traits. Our next god is very indicative of that. And we're talking about Hermes. Hermes has a lot of strength. And Hermes talks about his strength quite often. The problem is that Hermes also carries the burden of failed expectations. Now, I'm not always quite sure where those expectations came from. I think Hermes believes he could have been a contender. But it's easier for Hermes to hide behind his diatribes against others, to deflect from his own moral weakness. Hermes also has his own roller coaster. When Hermes has reached his peak in comparison to Apollo, Hermes becomes very calm and collected, very mannered, very conscious of others. Oh, but when Hermes hits the valley, you better duck and cover. Because Hermes becomes vitriolic. You never realize that there was so much anger stuffed away in a human being when Hermes hits his valley. And just like Apollo, it hurts to watch an individual who has so much good to offer, so much potential, but they keep going back to that script because that's the ending that they know. And that is the ending that acts as that security blanket. Don't turn that dial. You have reached the tipping point. And our show is titled Great Expectations Put to a Meritocratic Beat. Disavow. Disown, distaste, disobey, distrust, disgrace, disappointment, dissent, disclaim, disconnect, disarm, dissent, I can talk about this subject meritocracy because I come from a society where this ideal is the end-all and be-all. You can accomplish anything you like if you put your mind to it. That is the basic tenet of meritocracy. And the reward is for those who were able to overcome a not too perfect background. And they were able to overcome their inadequacies. They were able to overcome despair. And they were able to change their script. But let's be honest. Is this truly what we're measuring? And in fact, very often, those individuals that are able to accomplish more than you and I, due to their sheer tenacity, that we often try to fit them into our scripts. Have you noticed? Build them up.
Knock them down.
Build them up.
Knock them down.
Build them up.
Knock them down.
That's right. That's what we do. Now we can look at this subject on a macro level and a micro level. Let's start with the macro. Just finished consuming a book by an author by the name of Jared Diamond, and the name of the book was Guns, Germs, and Steel. And what the author was trying to show that there were certain conditions that took place at certain times within history which allowed for circumstances to play themselves out. And he was referring primarily to Europe and why Europeans were able to discover, quote unquote, the Americas and Africa, and not the other way around. Because if we look at the development in these other areas, it could have very well turned out different. And so Diamond alludes to three components that affected the circumstances, the alignment of the stars, which enabled the Europeans to perform the actions that they were able to do. And they were tied to the three germs, guns, and steel. And for those societies that were working with different weaponry, obviously guns became the game changer, and it allowed for the others not to compete. And the invention of steel allowed for certain progress that was not possible otherwise. And those two, you could say, yes, all right, I could buy that. But I thought the middle one in his title, the one tied to germs, was the most interesting. And he alludes to the processes that we followed here in Europe tied to domestication of animals and to what degree that allowed the Europeans to develop an immune system. Because the interchange between humans and animals became closer and closer due to the domestication. And as the phrase in German goes, anything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, that rule clearly applies here. And if we look at history, it was actually the germs that did the most damage. Now, that was not tied to any capability, because we know in Asia some of these developments came much earlier. But it was a simple twist of fate that allowed the Europeans to perform these actions in the way that they were actually performed. Now, let's look at all of this from a micro perspective. How many of those things that we claim as our own are really tied to something that we strived for and achieved? Or just like my macro example, how many might be tied to fate? And knowing full well that depending upon the cards that you're giving from the beginning, that plays a very important role as to the effort that's required, the networks that you have from day one, the necessity to change your script, and of course where you end up in the end. And you could even argue that this concept of merit is not dualistic. It's not a case of where either you have merit or you don't. Although when I think of the stories of my Greek gods, the merit that they do have continues to be overshadowed by the specter of their fallibility. Certainly in a society that's based on meritocracy, we often make the claim that, well, people just have to try harder, completely ignoring the advantages that are often are tied to those individuals who are making those claims, as if different rules apply to them. And I wonder if indeed this concept of meritocracy, whether it might even be a Western alternative fact. As if one's accomplishments are truly tied to individual initiative. And in fact, the star is very often tied to these same rules where if luck and influence were looking different and the star was not able to get that type of support from the others that never really becomes acknowledged, then you can say that this concept is truly an illusion. You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Now I'd like to tell you a story about an individual that I know, known for a number of years. Let's call him Atlas. And I think that the name chosen for this particular Greek god is truly apt. Because when you think about Atlas carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. And in the example of my Atlas, the Atlas that I know, this Atlas carries the weight of multiple worlds on his shoulder. This Atlas provided to me the first inkling of those individuals who cannot live up to their own expectations. Because this Atlas spends a lot of time talking about how great he is. It took me a while, but then I came to the realization that Atlas says all of these things because he doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe a word of what he's saying. Because if Atlas believed what he was saying, he wouldn't have the necessity to continue talking about how great he is. But really what Atlas is looking for the whole time is for Atlas's audience to say, yes, Atlas, you are great. Yes, Atlas, you are perfect. And the most important one, yes, Atlas, if you did not hold the weight of the world on your shoulders, this world would fall apart. And just like Apollo, and just like Hermes, Atlas has his roller coaster. There was something I didn't mention about Hermes that I think is very important. Just like Apollo, Hermes loves talking about himself because that is the way that Hermes is able to hold up the mirror so that you can say, yes, Hermes, you are beautiful. But one thing I noticed about Ham is telling his story that right in the middle, in a nonchalant sort of way, Hamis talked about some type of tipping point in his life where something happened that was outside of his control. And that ruined the balance for him forever. I could have been a contender. I don't know if Atlas ever felt that he could have been a contender. But this Atlas, his benchmark is perfection. Atlas can never forgive himself. Which of course means that Atlas continuously sets himself up for disaster. Because that is the characteristic that you will find within all human beings, that we are not consistent. Some are bothered more than others. And of course, yours truly is not found a way to escape. Especially when you take a chance and things don't work out. And you know it could have turned out better. But if you're able to free yourself of this so-called stigma that is tied to this aura of imperfection that we seem to disdain so much, although it's part of the human condition, that perhaps maybe we can even use that stigma as a badge of courage. That would be something that I would wish for Atlas. But I think Atlas is so hardwired in a completely different direction that he would never be able to throw away that script that would be his ultimate freedom. Within that script that I've been talking about, there's a concept that is very appropriate in describing this condition, and it's called learned helplessness, which basically infers that you think that you cannot do it. So that becomes part of your script. And that is so ingrained in your persona that you don't even try. And if you think about the conditioning, going back to Keegan in the social mind, and how destructive that can be if you do not fall within the norms of your group. And I talked about morals, I talked about beliefs, I talked about norms, but I haven't talked about roles. And we all know those roles that we have in our society. We have those roles for those fringe groups that we cannot expect anything more from them because they are born that way. And we also have that role for a group that represents 50% of our population when we say that girls are no good in math and science. And we make a big deal following this concept of meritocracy, where you're able to overcome those inadequacies that you were born with. And then we, as a society, tend to put an asterisk on top or onto the side of those accomplishments. We will say that she actually does a good job in spite of being a girl. Or they actually do a good job in spite of being a foreigner. Or they do a better job than I expected, considering that they're disabled. So the expectations don't always have to be great. And the learned helplessness is very strongly tied to the stigma that we attach to those individuals straight from day one. And within that social mind, if you keep hearing this message, then you not only do you believe it, you start to doubt that it could never be not true. And you reach a certain point in time where you don't try anymore. Because you play those tapes in your head. I can't do that. And you just cannot imagine that the ending can be anything different than the propaganda that you were being confronted with daily. And within the confines of that learned helplessness, we smell the scent of victimhood entering the room. where the individual is compelled to continuously make the claim, but they could have been a contender, but they were born this way. And because they were born this way, they will never be able to overcome their inadequacy. Now, I don't know about you, but that smells very strongly like victimhood. Where you continue to explain that you can't do anything about it. And sometimes, due to those perceived inadequacies, that they're used as having the right to those conditions where you can continue to live in that state, not even the state that you've freely chosen for yourself, but that state that has been stamped on your forehead. And yes, you've drank the Kool-Aid, and you see that as being part of your persona. And because we have so conveniently put people into these roles that we conveniently ignore those attempts that they place in removing themselves from those confines that they didn't choose for themselves. That they are looking to alleviate themselves from the shackles of those roles. And in fact, ironically enough, are interested in following the rules that we have ordained towards meritocracy in our society. But because we have defined these roles for them, we proclaim from the get-go, well, they can't do it anyways, so why should we bother giving them a chance? We have our vision of these individuals, and we are not capable of eliminating the bias that is tied to those preconceived notions that we have. There was an individual that I met not too long ago who was truly an inspiration. She is disabled, and it was all tied to a mess up that took place when she was 1.5 years old. She told me the story. In a botched batch of a polio vaccine. And she had other elements that took place in her life that were perhaps not so rosy. But one thing she showed me, in the way that she described her story, was made in such a matter-of-fact way that I was in awe. Somebody who probably under other circumstances would have taken on the shackles of victimhood. But she took it in a very pragmatic way. And decided to concentrate on those things that are beautiful in life. And those things that make her thrive. And those things that bring her joy. And those things that she can do that express those positive elements that we have among us always, but we lose the ability to actually see them. Going back to the story I talked about last week from Viktor Frankl and experiences in the concentration camp, within the most dire of situations, those things that we consider to be completely mundane can hold an awe-inspiring beauty of something that we were not capable of seeing before. And after that moment has left us, we carry it within our memory banks, knowing full well that even if we do not have that condition right now, we know that it exists. We know that it's achievable. We know that we are capable of cherishing its beauty. And so for these reasons, that woman became a role model for me. And perhaps maybe in the slowdown in closing the show, if that is something that I can give to you, the request to look for those things that might seem mundane, that might seem ordinary, those things that we take for granted, those things where we take no conscious value. And I ask you to try to find the beauty in those mundane things that we either have in nature or in the beauty that we have in being those unique creatures that we are. And I would argue if we look at those things as being our benchmark, then we will never make the claim that we could have been contenders. We will never make the claim that we could have been somebody, because we will come to the conclusion that by nature, we are somebody. And I would ask for all of you to allow yourself the possibility of accepting that fact. And with that, our tipping point roller coaster is coming to an end. So I'd like to thank you for allowing me to indulge in some of these thoughts. And look forward to some continual indulgement next week. Thanks for listening.